In the spring semester of 2013, San Jose State University launched an experiment with online course platform Udacity, with high expectations that the courses offered would not only be more accessible, but that the pass rate and scores of these courses would be far greater than that of traditional face-to-face courses. The experiment was a disaster, with failure rates averaging 56 to 76% across the board. In response, the Educational Department of the San Jose State University shut down the experiment and promised to rework the online courses, citing claims that the courses had been built too hastily. Professor Kai Horstman's Computer Science Introductory course returned in the fall semester of the same year, and his curriculum has been used for CS46A despite the professor's departure from teaching this course. But 4 years from the incident, the failure rate of CS46A remains high. The course simply repeats the mistakes of the previous course and creates other issues because it has inherited the faulty aspects of its online counterpart. That being said, the CS46A course should be changed so that its feature aspect replaces similar functions of an online course, rather than being added to the course as extra work on top of the ineffective mandatory lecture. The professor who rearranged the CS46A course stated that the results from his Introduction to Programming course did not result in nearly as many failures and should be considered a success. The Educational Department defines success through the retention rates of all computer science courses and their graduation rates. However, when considered in broad as a long-term or narrow as considered in a single course, as explained by the 2002 Greater Expectations National Panel Report written by the Association of American Colleges and Universities, such ranking is ill-representative of what students have learned. Put simply, a higher rating could be the results of a course that selectively accepts high-performing high school students and teaches them nothing. Ideally, as in an introductory course, it would reach out to students with no prior experience with coding and educate them in applying the concepts they have learned. However, as with online courses, those who succeed in such a course are those who have already succeeded academically. These students are driven and capable of completing the work given to them because they have already learned most or all of the material before arriving at the class. If the course is simply successful at teaching the material to students who already know the material, it is more like a review course for those who have already learned the material, a GPA booster for students who do not need to attend the lecture nor read any of its materials, essentially rendering the course useless as an introduction. Part of the original reason the CS46A course was adopted as an online course was for the convenience of class attendance. By transforming a course entirely online, it was at hope that students in the course would be both able to review the materials on their own time and, most importantly, avoid the boring nature of personally attending a lecture. However, as the current class stands, while mostly online, it is coupled with a mandatory lecture composed over 100 students crushed into cramped theater seats, those without seats sitting on the floor, without air conditioning or even ventilation to keep the room in a controlled range of temperature. Indeed, the original revamp of the CS46A course deliberately excluded the lecture aspect of the course in favor of using online quizzes produced by the instructor to check student understanding. But by incorporating this mandatory lecture, the dismal learning environment only decreases students' successfulness. According to a 2002 case study published by the Journal of Education and Practice, dim lighting, poor ventilation, overcrowding, and difficulty seeing the board due to classroom arrangement directly contributed to low academic achievement. It is markedly both hilarious and disturbing that any designer of the course believed that placement of students in such a room would be beneficial or at least acceptable environment for their learning. Therefore, in terms of its involvement in lecture hall environmental conditions, the CS46A class has most obviously failed, but the flaws of the lecture are an entire story on its own. When additional description of the subject matter is needed, students are provided means to turn to their professor to ask for clarification, but the structure of the class in terms of the number of individuals makes such assistance difficult to obtain. Although the lecturer allows students to ask questions during class, the numerous peers who are seemingly learning the material perfectly often makes it difficult for students falling behind to form questions that do not seem stupid or silly. This causes students to fall behind on basic concepts, researching these methods on their own in lieu of learning the strategies the lecturer intended them to learn. As for the strategies the lecturer wants her students to learn, One may be disappointed to find that the lectures of this course were not even created by the current lecturer. This disjointed means of presentation has a penchant for miscommunication, especially in online courses, in which it is responsible for causing rather unnecessary grief over the simplest of typos and referential mistakes. One would think that over the past 4 years, this lecturer would have learned the laws of such a debased pedagogy and also find the solutions to said problems. With such large audiences participating in the course, the persons directing the course had the solution of keeping track of participation through website platforms for discussion. A brilliant idea if one chooses not to consider how it has failed in the past, barely 2 decades ago. In a study by the School of Information Science and Learning Technologies of the University of Missouri on similarly structured online courses, students required to post a message weekly on this discussion board for participation points found the task inappropriate, particularly when penalized for not hitting a comment. When there is nothing meaningful to respond with or rhetorical questions asked, why should credit be taken from students for the silence? There are only so many questions that a student can ask, and in these events, students may attempt to use irrelevant questions and comments as a means to boost their grade. With such winding communication, the course designers failed in realizing that such prolific flow of information disables the user's perception. Currently, the Udacity programming courses are offered as a supplement to the course textbook so that each medium covers each other's selective weaknesses in education. However, as both the Udacity course and the online textbook require authoring of courses and assign additional supplementary materials, the paradox of having too much choice defeats the user's sense of freedom, rendering them unable to act or causing them to choose erroneously in a blind attempt to make the best of their situation given their current options. Students who choose to use Udacity to understand a specific part of the lesson end up not using the same information in the quizzes that count for points. Only the textbook quizzes count for actual points. This leaves very little motivation for students to understand Udacity material deeper through completing quizzes that will neither be recognized by the instructor or count towards the final grade. Despite how the CS46A class boasts mandatory lecture attendance and tests are taken within the physical building, the CS46A course is still very much an online course. In regards to student learning, the lecture is not completely necessary. Attendance, lecture, PowerPoint presentations, lecture quiz participations, homework submissions, textbook quiz submissions, and test submissions are all done online. Since students have to view the textbook and complete work assignments before coming to class, most of their time in the course is spent self-directed, whereas the lecture is simply there to tell them their due dates and present a lecture on the next lesson. Mind you, a lecture that the current lecturer did not even create. PowerPoint lectures were created by Kai Horstman, a professor who taught the original 2013 Udacity course and then reworked it in 2014, with changes made to the current course to bring it to its current iteration. Lecturers and professors using materials created by others as a means to teach the curriculum is nothing new, but when the lecturer does not understand the lesson she is meant to teach, the students receive an inadequate, diluted, and otherwise fragmented explanation. One would think that the lecturer could have accounted for the weaknesses in said PowerPoints and fixed them, but the lecture PowerPoints have remained unchanged for the past 3 years, while coursework has changed from semester to semester. It should come as somewhat surprise that students rely on other sources of information from their learning, such as tutorial videos, but for the lecture to not be a waste of time, it should not require these supplementary sources and should instead be tailored so that the lesson is discussed in both relevance and depth. The material covered during class lectures is organized counterintuitively and often in a means that is counterproductive to the learning of students. In each lesson, the lecturer briefly speaks about homework that was due on the same day as the lecture, skims the next lesson's main points, and then closes with an in-class quiz meant to test student understanding. What use is lecturing when it comes after the homework and the quizzes that are due? If the lecture correlates poorly with the student's homework and no or confusing responses received when asking for clarification of the subject, the student falls behind in understanding and will not realize his or her mistake until after the assignment has been turned in, if at all. The sentiment of confusion is only further boosted by the method in which the draft and final homework assignments are graded. Both the draft and final version of any homework assignment are graded together when the final assignment is graded. This means that a student who makes a fault in the draft version is likely to make the same fault in the final version and be marked off for both assignments. One could almost say that the same of the CS46A course, the 2013 version being the draft and the current 2017 version being the final. If the lecturer wishes to learn from her mistakes made in lecturing for the course, just as students learn from mistakes made in the work, a change of focus should be applied.